beginning of this year, I decided to try something new with my planning, which was quarterly planning. I made a couple of videos going through my methods, setting up my planners, and generally feeling optimistic about how I was progressing through the year, until I realized that I was doing quarterly planning very wrong. And I think it's super easy if you're like me to hear a fancy term like quarterly planning, really want to try it, and end up getting out a little bit over your skis when you try to put it into practice. So by the end of this video, we are going to learn exactly what I was doing wrong with quarterly planning and what I would do differently next time if I were to start again. Okay, let's head over to the flat lay. So let's talk about what quarterly planning actually is. At the end of the day, quarterly planning is a strategic method by which you break down your yearly goals into 4 manageable chunks called quarters in order to plan, measure, and execute your goals more effectively. So if we look at a year-long map, quarter 1 is January to March, quarter 2 is April to June, quarter 3 is July through September, and quarter 4 is October to December. Quarterly planning often creates a sense of urgency with your goals, which is one of the reasons I like it as an idea, because a 90-day timeline to achieve something is a lot more compact than a year timeline, which means you can see the end a lot better than you can see it on a year scale. When you're in January, December looks like it's forever away, but March looks like it's pretty close. Quarterly planning is also great because if you have a yearly vision and things are not immediately going to plan in March, you can adjust for the next quarter and change things around, fix your mistakes, because each quarter sort of builds in a review period. At the end of it, when you're setting up the next quarter, you sort of have to look back and say like, okay, what worked, what didn't work. So because you're always touching your goals, reviewing your goals, thinking about your goals in quarterly planning, you're able to adjust them and complete them more effectively with a better understanding of how you went right or wrong. And at the end of the day, you get something beautiful, which is not only one big resolution complete, but a vision of your progress along the way and little milestones that you can look back on and say, this is where I made progress. At least that's how it is supposed to work. So I tried to use this system because of 2 things. First, yearly planning was not working for me at all. I would set New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year like everybody else, and I would not follow through with them by the time we get to December because years are just way too big to hold in my brain. This timeline doesn't make sense to me. That's 365 days. That's 365 units of time. And I just don't, my brain doesn't understand that. My brain does understand 3 months. It does understand 90 days. And this feels a lot more manageable. So I switched to thinking about my life in these 3-month chunks, aka using quarterly planning. Also, at the beginning of the year, I purchased this common planner, which was made by Sterling Inc. She released them for the first time in 2023, and I am a paper planner girly through and through. So I knew I wanted to buy this planner because I really like Catherine and her products, but also because she has a quarterly planning method that she actually built into the planner. Now, I know the ink is fairly faint on this first edition of the Common Planner, but you can kind of get a sense here of what it looks like in her quarterly planning spreads. She has a vertical monthly calendar here on the right side, and then individual boxes for each month on the left with a priorities box at the top, and then space on top of the vertical calendar to write anything you might need. She also has a yearly goals template. I am going to be flipping to the yearly goals template right now. I will say, just for anyone who may be sensitive to these sort of things, I talk about weight and I show specific numbers. So if you don't want to visually see that, this might just be one you want to skip, but go ahead and comment down below if you are curious about anything in particular that you may have had to scrub through because you don't want to see that information, and I will let you know in the comments. So I'm going to flip to that now. So basically, Sterling Inc. has this goal breakdown page, which has 1 column to list the goal that you are working on, 1 column to list your someday experience, 1 column to list your 1-year goal. So at the end of this year, what do you want? Half-year goal, quarterly goal, monthly goal, weekly goal, and then your daily actions. I guess you could also use the weekly and monthly for actions as well. So I filled this all out at the beginning of the year, as you can see. And I thought that I was crystal clear. I thought I was good to go. I thought all I needed to do was fill this out and then fill out my quarterly planning worksheets as they came up, and I would accomplish. But oh boy, I did not accomplish. So let's talk about the reasons I failed. The first failure is that I didn't actually follow what I needed to do each quarter. So in this first spread here, like I said, there are opportunities to fill out your goals and where you want to be on a quarterly basis or monthly basis or whatever throughout the year. Now, I also was duplicating something that I had seen Catherine do in her other planners. She would draw this spread out and talk about her goals in this way, but I didn't really understand when I was setting this up what I needed to do. So I was using this column for the general area of life, that I wanted to touch on this year. I had a someday goal. I even wrote it in an action voice, right? I am a well-read person who thinks critically about literature and nonfiction. Wow, that is an action voice if I have ever heard it. And all of that I wrote in blue ink. And then I used this like green to denote milestones that I wanted to hit. So for example, in the reading one, I read 24 books. That is the milestone I wanted to hit at the end of the year. At half year, I wanted to read 12 books. At each quarter, I wanted to read 6 books. Each month, 2 books, and so on and so forth. And then in red, I wrote out specific actions that I could take. So I could plan upcoming books for the quarter, make a list of books. I could account for my books in Goodreads so that it kept me accountable. I could plan in weekly blocks on a weekly schedule. And of course, on a daily level, my task was just to read. These were good goals. I think this was a fine way to use this template. But what didn't happen was these tasks. And that's because instead of read, I could have written like read 30 minutes a day, read 10 pages a day. I needed to get a lot more specific with the goals that I had here, or rather with the tasks that I had here to complete the goals. This part was great. The visioning was great. It's very important when setting out a goal to really think about why you are choosing that goal, what the core value is that it's supporting in your life. So that's what I did here. I do want to be a well-read person. I'm an English major. I really actually do care about thinking critically about literature and nonfiction. And it's very important to set the milestones because having a concrete goal, saying I'm going to read 24 books, is a way for you to say I am on track to meet that goal or I am not on track to meet that goal. So by half year, I had read like 2 books. So that's really helpful, right? If I get to the half year mark and I've read like 11 books or 13 books, I can say, oh, I'm on track. I'm on track to accomplish this. If I had read like 2 books, I would not be on track to accomplish this, right? And then you can adjust from there. So I broke down my goals into these numerical values, and that was good. But when it came to the specific tasks, I just didn't have specific enough tasks. And I didn't even use these tasks. Guys, I cannot stress to you enough how silly this is. I didn't use these tasks. So when it came to the quarterly pages themselves, I don't have anywhere on here read. I don't even have reading mentioned. Oh my God. I have develop workout routines, which was actually the first one, health and wellness. I have build an ideal weekly schedule that has space for goals. Okay, whatever that means. I have some loose YouTube goals here, also, which I did not really accomplish. I even tried to start tracking something specific in March, and I put workout, daily draw, and energy work, which are all other goal related. The energy work and daily draw is a spiritual thing. The health and wellness was what working out was for, but I'm not writing reading or tracking specific actions here at all. I'm just not doing it, which is bizarre. So I essentially ignored the work that I did here when it came to the actual quarterly schedules. So lessons learned here. If you find yourself setting up quarterly planning at the beginning of the year, you need to actually make sure the plans you made for yourself translate into concrete actions that you're taking. You need to be writing down your actions, rewriting down your actions, memorizing them, and focusing on them. I had a huge opportunity here to narrow down my focus to these 3 months and prioritize habits and specific actions that I could take, and I didn't do that at all. My second failure was that I never adjusted my goals. So because I was just doing whatever I wanted on these goal pages, not related to anything at all, because I didn't actually reference my yearly plan unless I was reviewing my quarter. By the way, I did end up doing a lot of quarterly reviews and they were awesome. I really liked the review process, but this was the only time that I referenced this page at all. So because I was doing that and just doing heck all on the quarterly pages, other stuff came up. I wasn't focused on my goals, so other stuff came up. I wanted to get a skincare and body care routine going in to quarter 2. I wanted to prioritize my mental health. I also wanted to track a bunch of stuff. So I ended up wanting to track my energy levels, when my period was happening, when I was exercising. I wanted to see that all together, and that is a whole ass goal in and of itself to map those out.
and keep track of this. It's kind of related to health, but it's certainly not related to losing weight and exercise, which was what my health and wellness goal was really about this year. So what I should have done, lesson learned for you all, is that just because I made this yearly plan does not mean this is set in stone. I can change it, and I should have changed it if it emerged for me that I was just literally not focusing on any of my goals that I had set up. I never throughout the year adjusted my goals. In my quarterly reviews, I ended up talking a lot more about how I was feeling during the quarter, which was like really helpful, like don't get me wrong. But my action points were like create a weekly schedule, prioritize health and well-being. So yeah, so like one goal clearly was my focus, but the other ones were just not being built in. I needed somebody to like hit me over the head with the idea that I needed to go back, look at my goals and say, girl, you are not focused on reading. You are not focused on spiritual and personal growth. I was doing a lot of YouTube. I was doing a lot of Rachelle in Theory. So that's good. These two emerged as my focus that I could naturally accomplish without having them planned out, that I wanted to naturally accomplish. But the other ones, I really just needed to adjust. I really needed to say, okay, now the priority is understanding your menstrual cycle. That's what the priority is. Or now the priority is getting your skincare in order, or whatever I thought the priority was. It's okay if your yearly goals change, if your resolutions are no longer relevant by the time you get to quarter two, but you need to do some adjusting, and you need to be sort of like the bigger person to yourself and go through and say like, hey, like I'm actually interested in something completely different than I was 3 months ago. What can I do about it? How can I change? So my third failure is actually on this very page, and I'm going to admit something to you guys now. I am part of the paper planning world online, and when you are part of the paper planning space online, like I am, you're always surrounded by beautiful, immaculate spreads, and I wanted that. This quarterly planning template is like a paper planner aesthetic spread maker's dream. The print is really light. It has built-in trackers ready for you to go. It has designated sections for your months. It has lots of free space so you can customize the layout. It is a dream for something aesthetic. And what I wanted to do, at least when I got to quarter two, was I wanted to make a tracker that spanned 3 months that looked really, really good. So I have talked to you guys about how I came into this spread wanting to track my period, my energy levels, my sleep, my mood, and then my movement, all on this page. I still think that is a good idea. That was an idea that I had trickling around in the back of my head. But my third failure was actually looking at this page, looking at the blank version of this page and saying, I want this to be aesthetic. What ideas do I already have for tracking? And it was this. It was my period, it was my energy levels, it was my sleep. That was an idea I had banked that I had not fully figured out how I wanted to do yet. But I was like, look, I want it to be aesthetic. I want it to be pretty. What can I do? So I essentially pulled this goal out of thin air, did not pay attention to my yearly goals, and I built a whole system on this precious real estate that I should have been using for the goals that I worked so hard on at the beginning of the year. Now, I just said that you can and should change your goals if it emerges for you that what you set out at the beginning of the year to do is no longer what you want to do. I absolutely stand by that, but for me personally, I know that this was motivated by the fact that I was feeling like bored with my layout here. I mean, like I didn't even do anything with it on the in quarter one. So I knew I wanted something big and pretty to look back on, to have information about myself over a quarter. And I wanted it to look nice. I really wanted it to look nice. So I know that's where this motivation was coming from, even though I do think this is a really good idea to track. And I have since also tried to track it in other methods because this clearly didn't work for me, but it just didn't align with any of the goals I had set up, if I'm being super honest. So lesson learned here, do not fill a space with a whole new project or idea that isn't relevant to your goals. Do not devote a whole quarterly spread for planning something you think will look cool. And if you really do like the idea enough to want to give away this precious real estate, go back to your yearly goals and really evaluate what you want to drop so that you can fit this in. I think that's the biggest thing. If you want to add something new, don't just do it because it'll look nice or because you'll have a long list of checked off items at the end of the day. You really want to evaluate how it fits into your yearly plan. Keep this vision in mind, change it if you have to, but really evaluate it when you want to add something new. So I just did a bunch of complaining about what I did wrong, but what about this worked for me? The number one thing I really, really adored about quarterly planning was the built-in fresh start. Like I said, there are 4 of these spreads in the Sterling Ink Common Planner, and each time I turned to a blank quarter, I got an instant feeling of calm. When I started this journey, I said I wanted to build in as many resets as I could throughout the year, and it was really, really refreshing to have these quarterly checkpoints when I was devoting time to really thinking forward about how I wanted to set up the next 3 months. I know some people will organize their bullet journals around quarters, so use one bullet journal every single quarter, and then that way you also get the fresh start feeling because you're starting a brand new notebook every quarter. There are also some more like professional brand things that do something like that, so the Full Focus Planner is a good example. This book is 3 months of dailies and weekly spreads, which means that at the end of the 3-month period, at the end of the quarter, you pick up a new book and you start fresh, essentially. And it has sort of like goals and quarterly planning stuff built in. But essentially that fresh start feeling I found really indispensable. I really, really loved it. I also enjoyed seeing things on a 90-day timeline. Seeing things like that and planning like this actually really helped me with one of the pages I struggle with the absolute most, which is the weekly spread. I actually set this one up in a plan with me. I will leave it linked up in the cards if you want to figure out how I was planning my month for the back half of the year. This is a good example. But essentially, I was able to get into the months and see for myself what I had going on, what the long arc of my next 30 days would look like. And because I was doing this every quarter, I got to do that for like 3 months at a time, right? These are super messy, as you can tell, but I was able to get in here and see like, oh shoot, July is going to be really busy. I need to prep more in June or whatever. This week is going to be really busy, so I need to do stuff before. It was just a better bird's eye view of my time when I was looking at my time on a 3-month scale. Now, just looking at your time on a 3-month scale doesn't mean you're actually planning out how you're going to achieve your goals on a 3-month scale, but it was actually getting me to use my monthlies, and I cannot deny that that was pretty cool.
In general, I do think quarterly planning is a really great structure. I love the 3-month container as a way to plan and pace yourself throughout the year. I made a lot of mistakes, but I think with the lessons learned under my belt, I definitely would try this system again. Have you guys ever tried quarterly planning? Have you guys made mistakes, had successes? Let me know in the comments down below and share what worked for you and what didn't. Thank you guys so much for watching. I super appreciate you. If you want to keep hanging out with me, I do have a video right here next to my face, or I'm over on Instagram at Rachelle in Theory. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.